Boom. Hey, welcome. It's Monday. I hope it's a good Monday for y'all. I am back and I am looking to talk today about one of my favorite movies of the year and do a little live drawing. So let's get caffeinated. First off, spoiler alert, and sorry to my man Mike Montalvo, who hasn't seen the movie yet. But by this point, I feel like it's been enough time that most people had a chance to see the movie. If you haven't seen the movie, turn me off. Turn it off. Stop right here because I'm going to talk about some of the spoilers and some of the cool surprises that were in the movie. I feel like this movie was not just one thing, but packed full of stuff. It had a lot going for it. So I don't know where to begin because this isn't what I normally do. Normally, I have to just start talking about myself and my art. But I'm going to do a little Spider-Man stuff today. And so we're going to make this whole show Spider-Man themed. That was Spider-Man 2099, my favorite Spider-Man. If you haven't heard of him, in a nutshell, he's a version of Spider-Man from the future, or in the future. He's not from the future. It takes place in the year 2099, created by Peter David, and Spider-Man in that story is named Miguel O'Hara, which is fun because they play with a Hispanic Latin background and a like an Irish family thing, and it takes place in a future where like corporations are evil and have taken over, and they're fighting this evil entity Alchemax, and his costume is a Day of the Dead costume, which is why it looks different from our Spider-Man, and he's really hard to draw, so it drives me crazy, but I love it a lot. That Spider-Man, I believe, looked like it was in the trailer for the next Spider-Verse movie. So Into the Spider-Verse 2, when it comes out, looks like it's going to include also the future Spider-Man from 2099, which, again, I really, really dig. It's one of my favorite versions. So just checking my comments. All right, I always miss the comments, so thank you. If you are tuning in or just watching later, drop me a comment, drop me a line, let me know if there's something you'd like to hear me talk about, if there's something I'm going to stop talking about. Really anything. I'm trying to encourage more engagement because I like to interact with people. And I'm doing these videos every week, so I'm looking forward to doing a lot more. Sometimes I'll talk about art, sometimes I'll talk about myself, sometimes I'll talk about whatever. Today it's going to be a little all that. So starting with Spider-Man. For me, Tobey Maguire, the old like 2003, I think Spider-Man was the Spider-Man. I thought he was perfect to play Spider-Man and Peter Parker. And people disagree. Everybody disagrees. I think depending on who your first Spider-Man you saw was, that's who you think should be Spider-Man. My daughter thinks that Tom Holland is the best Spider-Man, hands down. So I'm going to break down what I think of each Spider-Man in a minute, but I just wanted to start with y'all. Like when I was a little kid, I saw the Electric Company, and there was just a guy in a cheesy Spider-Man costume on the Electric Company, and it was my favorite part of the show. Like every time I watched, and I don't even remember how old I was, but I was very, very small. And I watched like the Batman TV series where they climbed up the sides of the walls by turning the camera on its end and stuff. And it was just like magic to me, seeing superheroes on screen. And even as cheesy as it was just fun and magic. And so decades later, when they finally got enough like the technology progressed enough for CGI to be able to pull off a Spider-Man movie with any sense of like wonder and amazement. Um, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie just knocked me on my feet, uh, and to me still hasn't been matched. The first one. Um, it was a great story. I just bumped the table. It was a great story. It was an amazing character, no pun intended. And I thought that Tobey Maguire was geeky enough. Like Peter Parker is supposed to be. He's not handsome. He's not suave. He's not cool. You do see through the like he's clumsy in the beginning, and as he gets his powers, he becomes way more agile and all this stuff. Tobey Maguire played that nuance to a T, and that I mean I can't say enough. Um, Spoiler alert: the movie No Way Home. When Tobey Maguire appeared in this movie, it blew my mind. So if you haven't seen it, I'm sorry, and you should have turned this off by now. But the big kicker for Spider-Man: No Way Home was that they opened this door to the multiverse. Um, in a nutshell, they opened this door to the multiverse, and other Spider-Men, other characters, other creatures, other beings and stuff started to come through to our world. Um, and it started with like Doc Ock, and it was Alfred Molina from the Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man 2, with Tobey Maguire. They got Jamie Foxx from the Amazing Spider-Man as Electro to come through. They got the Lizards, so they got all these villains coming through specifically um, to because of Peter Parker, which was kind of a neat way to explain it. Look, you got to suspend your disbelief. This movie is ridiculously fantastical, and the rules are a little loose, kind of like with Endgame. It's a time travel thing, and in Endgame, and it's a fantastic superhero movie. And with all science fiction, you got to suspend your disbelief a little bit if you're going to enjoy it. Otherwise, you're just not going to enjoy it, which is fine. And just turn it off and don't enjoy it, and quit bitching about it, so the rest of us can enjoy it. One thing I really hate is how fan people, and I want to say fanboys, but it's fans of like Star Wars and comic movies and sci-fi. We like to pick apart everything to the point where we don't let it be fun for anyone else. And I like a good debate. I like to talk about like the rules of time travel, and I think that stuff is fun and interesting. But um, don't let it ruin your enjoyment. And if it does, cool. Watch something else. But let other people enjoy it, man. Like, just rude to shit on other people's fun. So anyway, all these villains came through, and we saw the trailers. We knew Willem Dafoe was coming in as the Green Goblin and stuff, and that was kind of awesome. And they've been teasing for months and months and months. There were leaks that Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield were going to appear and reprise their roles as Spider-Man from their franchises. And they denied it and they lied about it. And I mean, like, what are they going to do though? What else are they going to do? You really want to preserve that experience for people, especially the opening weekend, that see it cold, don't know anything, and just get that surprise, get that excitement when you first see it. Unfortunately, that is a luxury because of just articles on the internet and people on the internet. It's a luxury that only affords people who get to see something opening weekend. Like if you saw the Star Wars opening weekend, you didn't know that there was a cameo from somebody, or that like the Force Awakens, you didn't know Han Solo was going to show up. He's like, damn, Han Solo, Chewbacca. Like once people spoil that for you, you only really get that fun opening weekend, which kind of sucks, honestly, for me. Sometimes I don't go see every movie opening weekend. Spider-Verse was one, or almost called it. No Way Home was one that I had to see opening weekend. And it was a rough weekend too. Like my daughter had a dance show, and I was working. My wife works. We could literally not find a time when all three of us could go to the show together. So what ended up happening is they went during the day on Saturday after my daughter's dance show, and I had to work. They went to the movie, the two of them, and then as soon as I got out of work, I grabbed a movie in Saginaw nearby, and I saw it. So we at least all saw it the same day, and we had to talk about it Sunday morning. But it's so much that it was a great movie. It was a big movie, and people were already starting to drop spoilers and online, and the Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield appearances weren't even the only spoiler to me. There's a lot more cool shit in that movie. So long story short, this movie dragged in Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man and Peter Parker, and Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man and Peter Parker into the new reboot, series, the third movie of Tom Holland as Spider-Man and Peter Parker. And it was just mind-blowing. It was amazing to see. I only have the one graphic. I'm gonna show it again though. And these are all just like movie posters from their individual Spider-Man shows. But it gives you a sense that like there are these different takes on Spider-Man. And as I've said, Tobey Maguire just is Spider-Man for me. He is and was the best Peter Parker and Spider-Man. He was nerdy, he was funny, he was goofy. I like the build of this Spider-Man very much, and I think he's very similar to Tom Holland in that he's muscular, but he's short, he's thin, he's not a big imposing figure. Andrew Garfield's taller and leaner, and some people like that. When I draw Spider-Man, I do not like to draw a tall, lanky, lean Spider-Man myself. I draw Spider-Man more like this. Ta-da! Hey, check me out at Midland Comic Con, March 6th and 5th. So I like more of a normal size, stocky Spider-Man, and I think making him shorter makes him seem younger. And I think Spider-Man being a younger character makes the most sense to me. So it was a blast of a movie, and it really, the movie was not just like a lead up for just a gimmick to get these Spider-Man in place. It was important that these Spider-Men were in this movie and that they worked together, and each one brought something the other one didn't have to the story to resolve the conflict. And that I won't spoil for you. Uh, the sneaky spoilers like that, or um, the Daredevil appearance. Uh, Spoiler alert. Um, those were moments that were amazing and awesome, and I'm glad some of them weren't spoiled for me. But I do think I'm not going to tell you the whole plot of the movie. I do want you should see it, and you should not know everything that's about to happen, because there's some emotional stuff, there's some funny stuff, there's great action. I mean, they went above and beyond. It was a big budget like Marvel movie, and I'm not going to knock that. There's another thing people like to do is like trash things that are like fan service, and why? Like without fans, these movies wouldn't exist. So what the hell? Give us what we want. But I think when you start with story first and then build all these other things into it, clearly a lot of work went in, and it paid off in spades. So I thought it was an amazing movie. The only one so of all the Spider-Man movies, I have not seen Amazing Spider-Man with Jamie Foxx. And I never wanted to. I watched, honestly, sorry for the fans, but like I did not like Andrew Garfield as Peter Parker or Spider-Man for that matter, but definitely not as Peter Parker. I did not think he played nerdy, geeky, awkward at all. And that it was hard for me to get into. Made it hard for me to appreciate the character. Plus, it was like we just had 3 Spider-Man movies. Why are we rebooting it? There's a sense that, and I feel that way about the Batman. Batman's coming up, might be a perfectly good movie. Why? We've just done this. It feels like a cash grab, and the Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield just felt like a cash grab to me. But now that we have him tied into the universe that we're watching, that I'm invested in with Tom Holland, I kind of want to go back and get some of the backstory so I can further appreciate what he brought to this movie. If you haven't seen him, I think it works. I think the movie works really well, especially, like I said, I did not see the one with Jamie Foxx, and Jamie Foxx was in the movie, and I'm so glad they changed his costume. Some they did some stuff and fixed some things that needed fixing from the other series. So it's a great ride. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of excitement, and I recommend it to anybody. Well, let's get to some drawing. 'Cause I don't really have much more to talk about without totally spoiling the movie.
That
That
is
is my I'm hearing an echo. Hold on, Ken. How about that? Okay. Sorry, my bad. Forgot to mute the mic on my camera phone here. This is a sketch pad. That is me goofing off at work, drawing Ron Swanson from Parks and Rec. He's fun cat to draw. Let me get to the. Oh, let's walk down memory lane. This is me playing around drawing Batman. This is me just scribbling. Ooh, that's a Hulk I'm going to work on. I'll show you that another time because I'm going to finish that. So I've done Spider-Man videos before, and so if you watch me draw Spider-Man and you hear me do my commentary about it, it's probably going to be some of the same. Hello, look at me switching sides. So let's see if I got my pencils straight. I need background music. I could use a producer. Let's go straight to this. Alrighty then. I'm gonna do something different too, and I'm gonna draw with actual pencil. Usually I draw with blue line pencil. Oh, I like this one. So that I can scan and ink it better. Okay, I'm just gonna go for it. When I draw Spider-Man, I always start kind of rough. But I always like to draw the head. I'm making this up as I read on the fly. Just want you to know, don't know what this is gonna look like. Spider-Man I love though because he's a lot of fun to draw organically. I've talked before about how much I don't like drawing, or not that I don't like, but I'm not the best at capturing like Batman or Superman organically. They are such a particular character, and they have such weight to them. For me, not that Spider-Man doesn't. I just think maybe it's because I've drawn Spider-Man. So doing these lines across here so I can find my eye line and my center, especially when I'm drawing a figure looking forward, I need to make sure I've got the thing centered. Can't decide what he's going to be doing, so I'm just going to do some lines here, like a spine, and then legs popping out. You know what? I shouldn't be doing this live because now you're going to watch me screw up. I don't like the way any of that was going. And I don't want this video to be 2 hours long, so I'm going to do it rough. I'm going to do it more of something that if I wanted it to be a masterpiece, I would have pre-planned it. The most natural Spider-Man for me is a side-facing Spider-Man like the one you saw. So after I get ahead, I sort of think about the skeleton, clavicles, shoulders, and then like arms. Which way would they go, and then build up muscles around them. And sketching like this really rough helps me figure out the placement of things. And I do so lightly that I can erase it, hopefully. So then you think about Spider-Man. Spider-Man is usually got to be, if you're drawing him in action, he contorts and twists, and you want to. That's a personality trait that his whole body has to show you. I love doing a perspective when I do Spider-Man. Now you don't see that so much in this piece. It's just Spider-Man just in action. But like I love to draw Spider-Man and do something here, like where you see a hand coming for you or a foot. I love when you see a Spider-Man foot coming right at you. Uh, Perspective is tricky to pull off, though. And if you can't do it right, sometimes you're just better off not doing it at all. Like I'm about to try and pull off a swip hand thing coming at you in the foreground. I'm not positive I'm going to get this quite right. The other thing, and again, I'm sorry, I apologize for um, the angle being off here, but when I'm trying to film while I'm drawing, sometimes it's awkward because I'm not at the same angle I would just normally be drawing at. I'm trying to be on the side, can't be right over top of the paper, which is where I would be if I were drawing naturally. If I had a more elaborate camera setup, maybe I could pull that off, but I can't. As Miss Rose would say, you get what you get, you don't sew a fit. That hand is not coming out right for me. So sometimes what I do, if something's not working, but I know something else is, I'll just kind of skip it for now and come back to it. So I'm assuming I still want the hand here, and then I'm gonna the wrist, elbow, shoulder. You know his arm's gonna want to go straight. Then here, I need him to bend. You would have a leg bent, so I'm gonna just draw right in that leg. Um, every artist is different, and every artist is tricky, like me. So as I say, like I do a skeleton, I don't really do just a skeleton. Once I figured out where I know where the hip is, I'm gonna go right at just drawing the thighs. I don't love to draw more pencil lines than necessary, so I don't do the figures like a lot of people draw in their a lot of people drawing their stick figures like really before they draw anything else. Some people do what's called a bean method, where your torso would be like this, and figure out how your guy bends and totally looks like a bean. I'll be honest, I use a combination of things, and I'm just trying to figure out his body first. That's why I kind of start with a basic spine. I feel like you can't go too far from the spine once you figure that out. Then I build from there, muscle structures, pecs. Especially with a superhero character, muscles are tight and pecs are their own character unto themselves. You get those wrong, and your guy looks totally off. Now, Spider-Man also, he's kind of a guy you can play with a little bit the anatomy. I don't like to do a wild anatomy, like totally straying, but for example, this leg is going a little wonky, but to me, sometimes you can get away with it with Spider-Man in the interest of making sure that his pose is dynamic. So to me, especially with the legs, if you're coming uh, out or on the sides, you can really twist Spider-Man more than the other characters. And I think he's going to be just kind of bent over. Spidey, when he's in flight, not flight, when he's swinging through the city, um, it's fun because he can contort in all kinds of ways. And you can sort of imagine him twisting in midair and having to right himself like constantly. I think the new Spider-Man does a great job of capturing that. The new Tom Holland version in the movies. The CGI guys are awesome, making him flip and twist and turn and bend. So that's a ton of fun. First time though, guys, man. I mean, I'm old enough now to know to have been in the movie theater to see that first Spider-Man. And the first time you see that, it blows you away how much acrobatics they put in. So I'm gonna kind of make his leg go smaller here because I want it to seem a little bit like it's bent. Do a shadow. And all right. Now this leg's bugging me because it's going a got it looking larger like it's coming forward, but it's really also going to the side. So I'm going to change that up. Make his knee more like here. He's coming forward, not just so much off to the side. But I really need that perspective to get pulled off. Another great fun thing about Spidey when he's in the air, you can have one of his hands just wide open, just pulling apart even wider than natural hands can go. Because A, he's a superhero, and his abilities would be a little different from yours and mine. And B, I like to imagine he's just constantly like letting go of one web. So I got a web here that he's got to let go of, and he's got to make sure he deliberately lets go of it. Otherwise, it'll stay with him. It'll stick to him. It's a very sticky substance. So I feel like he's got to use. It's almost a power of his that he's got to let go of. The rules of the webbing are shady. Honestly, they mess with you a lot in the movies and the comics. Like if the webbing is so sticky, how can he let go of it so easily? Or how does it adhere to things sometimes and not others? But again, if you don't suspend your disbelief and just enjoy it, you'll never have any fun. Never have any fun with it. So anyway, with the knees bent here, then his other leg's really got to go just up underneath, and his foot, other foot's going to be right here by his crotch. Spidey's crotch is a tricky subject as well. Let me tell you right now, because you want to make it look like he's wearing tights. I also want to not make it like I never draw a superhero bulge, guys. I just don't. Some people do. That is not my jam. I don't. I feel like you have to allude to it so it looks natural, but I just never want to draw a superhero junk, man. I just don't feel like that's okay. Not like I said, not my jam. Not my style. Not the kind of I draw what I want to see in comics, and I don't want to see that. Similarly with like the Hulk's nipples. I draw the Hulk a lot, and his nipples are a constant source of aggravation. Because I don't want to see that. You don't want to be too specific with it. You don't want to be too realistic with the nipples, or they draw your attention away. But yet, if they're missing, it also draws attention. Okay, so I'm starting to darken in some of the lines that I know are going to be there. And as I'm darkening, I'm adding. See, I've got little webby points. I'm going to add some little more character and definition to those shapes that we're going to make, like the muscles and the hands and the fingers. This hand is spread out really wild and wide. Um, but like I said, for Spidey, I try to get away with some of that because dramatic effect. So I've got Spidey going on here. Still not sure about this hand. So I'm gonna stop avoiding it though, because I want to finish this, or at least the rough of it, for this video, and I'm at 29 minutes. I'm doing these things too much more than half an hour. I love that you guys tune in. Uh, I say things like tune in. I love that you guys watch. I love you guys for paying attention to any of my art at all or my circular rambling. But and because I care and I appreciate it, and I'm not an amazing podcaster with a lot to say, um, I don't want to make these things too long. I'm pushing it to the edge of this paper, and I think that's what's bugging me. That's definitely what's bugging me. So I gotta decide: do I want to squeeze something and fit it into the page, or do I draw it naturally where it's just going to go off the page? And again, had I pre-planned this picture, I would have planned it better, moved him over a little bit, because it looks to me like if I got to do his whipping gesture, his pinky is gonna go right off the page. Yes, sir. It's gonna, but that's fine. You know what? It is what it is. I'm gonna erase some of this. I'm gonna erase some of that. Had I been drawing this in blue line, I wouldn't be bothering erasing much. Just checking my pencil. So that's okay. I'm going to stop trying to squeeze that over and just accept that it's going off the page, and it's going to actually allow me to go wider and just embrace it. I might fix that digitally once if I scan this and do a drawing in the computer for it. I can always add the dimensions. In reality, you can't add paper, but in the computer, God bless, you can do whatever you want within reason, and that you have, of course, the skill for. I have some Photoshop skills. I'm by no means a genius or a guru with Photoshop, but I know enough to do what I need, and I know enough how to use YouTube videos to also get what I need. So that's better. Not trying to squeeze that hand in for just this tiny, tiny, tiny bit here changes everything. So now that I'm more happy, I'll make sure I got figures, details here. So now I'm doing this in my head. I'm imagining his wrist, and then going backwards, his elbow, and then his shoulder here, clavicles. So in my mind, I'm just sort of checking that that's going to work, that the line goes where I want it to. Like I wanted this arm to be bent. Do I want this arm to be bent or not? He wouldn't be bent. He'd be going straight forward. So make sure I got a straight line from the wrist. Forearm, it's going to be a curvature here for that muscle. Elbow, the elbow thing right here. Bicep. But again, trying to do perspective with it. So this muscle would be covering this muscle. And this is where a normal guy, you wouldn't see that much round definition, but he is a super freaking hero. So you, for both men and women, you want to see the most like exaggerated, perfect physical form. And that might be a video I do later, a debate for another time about like sexiness and physicality in superhero comics. Because there's a lot to be said for the over exaggeration of the perfect form. Um, I come somewhere in the middle where I don't like to do like overly sexy comics, but also if this character has a purpose, like you can't draw Captain America believably with the intent of uh, making him traditional anyway, and not give him the most physically fit musculature possible. Now there are arguments for like the in Avengers Endgame they had the bro Thor with the kind of beer gut and not peak form, and there's a reason for that in that story. But when you don't have that story point to deal with, and you're just trying to draw the character that's supposed to have like zero body fat and just be the most agile and uh, I don't want to say perfect, but I mean the absolute best physical form that a human can achieve, which would be you know totally lean, no body fat, um, tight, taut muscles. Someone would be if they were bodybuilder, and that's really the standard, honestly. And so I feel the same way with the female forms. You're gonna theoretically you try to do um, an idealized version of it, if not totally realistic. Now and then again, you get into where comics draws like huge boobs and butts, but thin waists, and that's none of that's totally realistic. And I would argue that we had comics go way too far with that kind of thing. But like I said, that's a debate for another time. Now, as you see, I'm just going in and starting to sketch the costume. Figured out where my guy's muscles go for the most part. This process is this part of the process is a little more organic for me. I'm jumping all over the place, following just the creative side of it. When I'm doing Spider-Man 2, I always like to start adding more shading to the blue areas. So you see I'm putting in some shadows and some lines and some shading like that. I'm going to go to the, let's see, got the basic outlines for his costume. Spidey's got this great design. This costume design is so perfect and classic. I will show you this again, this thing with the Spider-Man, because Tobey Maguire's costume there is as close to perfect as they've come. Although every one of these has great elements, um, the way that the webbing is spaced on Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man is awesome to me. Um, I like the eye shape on Tom Holland's, but sort of like I still like the webbing, and the webbing to me is key. Don't like the webbing at all on the middle one, Andrew Garfield. Sorry, not sorry, man, but it just doesn't spread out for me and web in a curved way. I don't like that straight. Although I feel like that's also some sort of homage to classic, um, not classic, but like I think the way every kid draws Spider-Man webs is more like a grid because we when we're little we like just don't know yet how to make those webs happen, and they look weirdly plain. But you know when you're 5 or 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, wherever when you're a kid, this is how I would draw Spider-Man when I was 5, more or less. Um, but the costume designs and you know they didn't go too far from the original for the No Way Home and the new Tom Holland Spider-Man suits. And for the record, I love the actual costume tights way better than like the Iron Spider or the Tony Stark um, inspired armor. You know, Spidey should wear tights. Something they got back to uh, more recently. Anyway, so drew in the shape of there his gloves come up to the wrists, his or mid forearm, his boots, for lack of a better term. They're like a boot sock because they do come up half the way here, but they're also skin tight. So I think he's just always had kind of a very tight boot um, shoe on the bottom, and that comes halfway up. So once I've got that in, I've got the waistband here, sort of a belt, but not a belt, and I've got these, and then this goes halfway there. Um, and then I go back and I'm going to do the eyes, Spider-Man's eyes. Um, when I draw Spidey, I have a particular way that I draw his eyes. I draw him with a little bit of a curve on top here. I like to make sure it's thick enough. This looks, wait, that came out a little thicker than I liked. Oh well, I'm gonna go with it. That's a little more Todd McFarlane looking inspired, if I'm being honest. Which one of my favorite Spider-Man artists, if only for the sake that he knew dynamics. You can people argue all day long that Todd McFarlane sucked at anatomy, and especially early on, he definitely did. But like that was not the focus. That was not the the whole point of Todd's Spider-Man was not to be realistic and anatomically correct. In fact, I'll argue it wasn't most of his characters. It was dynamics. He definitely sacrificed realism for the sake of energy, and that is not an invalid perspective, man. It's not wrong to look at it that way. I had a problem. I have a problem doing that in my art because that's not me. So I'm always like with Spider-Man, trying to balance semi-realistic muscle frame with getting some dynamics in there. One thing that's been a hard lesson to learn, and maybe I haven't totally learned it yet, is straying from realism for that sake. Because as an artist, like I want to draw things realistic, but I also want to make them super exciting, and those two things just don't always work. I have this problem with Batman a lot, trying to draw him like stoic, and very few people pull off Batman that is both brooding and stoic and dynamic, like Spider-Man. He's a good a good Batman should will have both elements, and I feel like very few artists that I know of have really captured that. I would argue Alex Ross can do just about anything. Jim Lee, maybe the most prevalent and well known. He can draw at standing still pose and still make it somehow full of action. I am constantly jealous of Jim Lee. I'm sorry, I'm getting into the weeds a little bit here. I'm enjoying doing the blacks, the darks on the blue, just because. And when this is black and white, you're not gonna, uh, or you'll be able to tell the difference between the colors because the black, the blue will be shaded in this like shiny way. Got into a debate online with someone when I posted my Spider-Man picture over color choices and my choice of the blue on Spider-Man, and he's like, Spider-Man's blue should be shiny, and I'm like, I don't think it should, or I don't think it has to, but it does help when you're drawing it like this. If you're doing black and white to differentiate, like I'm doing, it does make it look like a different um, color. I would also argue that it's not a different fabric from the rest of Spider-Man. So why is it shiny? But visually, it is difficult to justify doing this same style of shading in the red area because the red is already going to be super busy. Um, I do my Spider-Man symbol like this all the time, same way. Large torso there for the spider, small round head, and then two up top and two in the bottom. This is a sketch, so it's not as deliberate as some Spider-Man things would be. I'm going to switch back to the other pencil, but I'm going to press a little harder so I get the line. All right, it's my favorite part, the webbing. Where am I at? Okay, guys, I'm at 43 minutes. I apologize. I'm trying to do this webbing quick because I don't want to just leave it hanging. So about 3 lines up top, 1 on the side, and 4 around the bottom for the rest of his face. Got a little bit in the middle, and then it goes out from here. I don't know how many webs. I just know when I see the spacing, I know when it's right. Then as I'm going, then I see if I see a place that needs shading, I'll throw it in. I always do one straight down the middle to just give you that to the point of his belt. And it is a belt. It looks like there's no belt there. He doesn't have a visible secret utility belt like Batman, but he has and he does. He's got a Spider-Man has like a light thing in the middle where he's got that Spidey signal he can project. Never understood why. Not like the bat signal where he's gonna use it to call himself. But in the comics though, they had like the Spidey signal he would project to just I think instill fear in victims or victims and villains. If he's in an alleyway, for example, he would project that Spidey symbol, round face, and it would strike fear into the hearts of muggers everywhere. So webbing is its own character too, and you got to follow the direction of the webbing properly. See, I just now did that wrong. I did that backwards, and I usually don't go inward toward Spider-Man. I always go outward. Start with the center. Basically, the center is his head, and the webbing just grows from there. It comes to a point right here between his eyes, the focal point of the Spider-Man, and then every row of web goes out. See how I did this? And this is wrong. It's driving me nuts um, because I didn't follow my usual pattern. The fingers always just go like straight like this, loop, 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 loop. I'm doing this really fast now because I don't want this video to be an hour long. They'll come to a circle right here where he touches his web shooter. I need a little more definition here, so I'm going to go with a darker pencil because I really don't want to lose the fingers. When you started putting these details on Spider-Man, all these lines, all these lines, all these lines, smudging my pencil, all these lines can start to get muddled. So you got to go in and use your eye and put in some blacker thickness, define. You go from his actual body to the design, the lines of his costume. So the other thing though, the boots and gloves, the webbing runs opposite. You don't want the webbing to just keep going the same way outward. The webbing actually goes in the very opposite direction. I don't know if anybody who's not a comic artist ever notices stuff like that. Hopefully you don't, honestly, hopefully. If we do our job right, you don't think about it too much. If we do it wrong, it takes you out of the whole picture. That's why I'm sort of talking about this as I go. I imagine that unless you're a comic artist watching, that you haven't really thought through the details of the Spider-Man costume. You just look at it and it's cool. So I'm sort of just talking through my aspect, my perspective on it. Okay, almost there. I'm gonna do a little detail on darkness up where I want to make sure I've got some thickness and the lines don't get lost or muddled because this did start out as a sketch. There's a lot of light lines all over the place. It's kind of the job usually I would do in inking. If I was inking a picture, that's where you give the blacks. It's their weight, make them pop. Alrighty. So that's Spider-Man coming forward, arm going back, spinning a little bit. He's in midair. Clearly, he's not standing. And I'm gonna do two things. One, if I'm doing a web, I always like to have the web somewhere. So this is here going to be his little spaghetti strap web that he's letting go of. In the comics, they had explained that Spidey's web, while it has great strength and is nearly indestructible to normal powers, it also dissolves. So all these webs that he leaves like stuck to buildings and stuff, it will dissolve in a short amount of time. I don't remember where I read that, but it was in the books. This just being a sketch, and if you're an artist out there, please don't kill me for this, but I really didn't. I'm really just playing with the form. I didn't really start with a great defined light source, so my shading is sort of all over the place. Sometimes it works though, and I'll tell you why. Because um, especially Spider-Man being up in the air, out in the open, light's coming from all over the place. He's got light coming from the sun in the sky, but he's also he's around all these buildings, and you got to remember that light reflects off of buildings and stuff. So I defend my choices in that way. So last but not least, a detail that a lot of artists forget about. Spidey has this little weird piece of webbing under his arm. And it is not curved like these webs. It is straight across grid, just like it's mesh or woven. And it just goes like kind of from his elbow to his midsection there. And that's part of the original comic design that I like to stay true to. Sometimes it feels like it doesn't belong, but it always does. I think it adds a little aerodynamic to him. Maybe helps him not fly, but soars of the air a little bit like wings. And there we are. I am at 50 minutes. Sorry that took so long. Maybe next time I'll talk about the movie while I'm drawing. This is a Ken Spider-Man sketch. Thank you for watching. I'm going to scan and post this later. It didn't turn out half bad. I may have still messed with this wrist and hand too much, but it's Spider-Man. It's fun. It's dynamic. I'm going to cut that out there. So thank you for watching that. Appreciate you guys checking it out, tuning in. I want to remind everybody I will be at the Midland Mall Comic Con on March 5th and 6th. That's a big, busy weekend, so come out and join us. Sponsored by Fetz, Toy Depot, and Paul King, and the great people involved with this. It's going to be an amazing show. You can also see the great Ted Davies at this event. Here's Ted. Ted's been nice enough to have me on his show a few times, and sort of helped me get started doing my own live streams. So I always give Ted a shout out because he's a great guy. He supports other creators with his every breath. It's so great to see someone who isn't selfishly all about themselves like I am. So thank you, Ted. Appreciate you. I have a bunch of other projects. I'm going to talk about those on another live stream because this one went too long. I'm not totally here for self-promotion. I am trying to just do some engagement and have some fun. So let me cut this off and say my goodbyes. Hide that. All right. Thank you for watching. And I say every time, we are a tapestry of a society, and the world needs each other. So if I believe anything at all, I believe that we're here to help each other. And so I will be the kind of person that wants to help out. Like if you're having a bad day or something is the matter and you don't feel like you have anybody, hit me up, because I don't want anybody to feel like they don't have somebody. This has already been a really rough year for a lot of people, and a lot of things are weighing on us all, and have been for a while. Just remember, you're not alone. You're not the only one going through some shit. I'm going through some shit, whether I talk about it with you or not. I have some baggage. I have some issues, and working them out together is I think the only way we can work things out. I think we're here to help one another. So do something nice for somebody. Make sure you take care of yourself, and reach out if you need to, because one of the hardest things to remember is that you should not bottle up your feelings, your anger, your problems. They always find a way out, and the more you fight it, the harder it can get. Thank you. Take care of yourself. Take care of one another. Peace.